if you look at the world of entrepreneurship in South Africa, I think one of the biggest problems is that we don't entertain failure easily. So
Yes.
when you see an entrepreneur, firstly, the entrepreneur's got a mindset that I've got to be perfect first time. Um, and the second point is that, funders aren't really tolerant to failure because they see it as bad, they see it as you not being effective. Yet if you look overseas, and specifically in the US, venture capitalists actually won't invest in your business until you've got a track record of failure. So it's a very, very different mindset. And I've always kind of thought, how in this environment can we promote more of a comfort with failing and seeing it more as as opportunities to grow, as opportunities to develop, as opportunities to change our way of thinking, as opposed to seeing it as failure for failure's sake.
Welcome to Risk and Rise, the podcast where we explore the journey of overcoming the fear of failure, embracing risk, and achieving success in entrepreneurship, creativity, and personal growth. I'm your host, Talana Simpson, and I'm thrilled to embark on this journey with you. Together we'll discover the strategies, insights, and shifts in our thinking and attitudes that are needed to turn setbacks into stepping stones and transform fear into fuel for success. So grab your coffee, get comfortable, and let's dive into today's episode of Risk and Rise. Welcome to Risk and Rise. Today we are getting to spend some time with Donna Rachelson. She is a driven entrepreneur, a woman empowerment evangelist, a branding and marketing enthusiast, an investor, an author, and a speaker. Donna epitomizes the phrase fail fast and fail forward. So let's find out what she means and how she has learned and grown from failing. Welcome, Donna, to Risk and Rise. It's wonderful to have you here. I wanted to start off by just asking you if you could share a bit about your journey and specifically a time where you took a risk and you rose up to the challenge, even if you failed at it. But we'd love to hear a story of how you took a risk and rose up.
Wonderful. So yeah, thanks so much for having me, Talana. And just a little bit about my background. Really, I had quite a solid corporate background, started off in change management, was identified as having potential, put forward for an MBA, fell in love with branding and marketing, held a marketing management position at African Explosives and Chemical Industries, moved to the South African Institute of Chartered Accountants as their marketing director, then backtracked a little bit to a marketing management position at Standard Bank, then was headhunted by Nando's to be their marketing director, and then moved to a supply chain management company where we focused on launching this concept of an integrated supply chain into Africa, which was very ahead of its time. So I was the marketing director there. And then after that, through various circumstances, through where I was in my head, I always felt that I had this entrepreneurial spirit in me, is that I launched into entrepreneurship. And, I was very excited about this. And the one thing that I had taken from the corporate world that really you can't take into the entrepreneurial world is that everything is perfect and everything is going to work out. And I had not quite integrated this concept that actually you've got to embrace failure because you're going to have a lot of failure along the way. And, I'll never forget, as I started out on my entrepreneurial journey, I started off really as a marketing consultant, identified one or two clients who really were comfortable to have me to run their marketing, and then it started building from there. But at the same time, I had these amazing ideas. And I'll never forget two probably of my best business ideas, but they failed to launch for various reasons, which I'm really happy to unpack. But the first one was called Nibblewise, and it was really also a little bit ahead of its time in that how do you provide children with healthy snacks when you send them to school? So, I was looking at really low GI little biscuits and little packets of nuts and little packets of biltong, but really making it appealing. And the name was brilliant, Nibblewise, and, great, obviously coming from a marketing background, putting all the marketing behind it. But little did I know that that was a B2C business. And in order to be a successful B2C, you need quite a bit of cash around it to actually invest in getting your name out there, to building some awareness, etc. And of course, I didn't have the cash. And of course, at that time, I didn't have the knowledge that if you had a really great business idea, you could potentially go and find some funding for the business. So that was just an absolute disaster. And then one of my other royal failures, but also such a brilliant idea, was another business called Safe Zone. And Safe Zone, the concept behind it was, why doesn't each room have like a little safe room that, in the case of a burglary or a robbery or you held up or whatever, it was a very safe place that you could go to, that had some food, that had some medical kind of equipment in there. Also, like, I thought the name was brilliant. The concept was brilliant, and I had brought in a kind of a guy who'd had quite a bit of security experience. So, in the main, he was good on paper, but he just wasn't the right partner for me. We didn't think in the same way. Our values weren't aligned. It wasn't a core focus for him at that time. And so needless to say, the business failed to launch. But it was probably from these two businesses that I just learned so much about business. And, I'm a strong believer that you got to fail fast and you got to fail forward. And that's really the mindset that I approach most of what I do. And in fact, even with the staff that I have in the various businesses that I run, is like I ensure that we embrace failure, because failure is just so strong. It's so powerful. And you learn from it. And if you could take those learnings and embed them into what you do next, into your next ventures, it's just so compelling. And just interestingly, before I just end off on this point, is, if you look at the world of entrepreneurship in South Africa, I think one of the biggest problems is that we don't entertain failure easily. So when you see an entrepreneur, firstly, the entrepreneur's got a mindset that I've got to be perfect first time. And the second point is that, funders aren't really tolerant to failure because they see it as bad. They see it as you not being effective. Yet if you look overseas, and specifically in the US, venture capitalists actually won't invest in your business until you've got a track record of failure. So it's a very, very different mindset. And I've always kind of thought, how in this environment can we promote more of a comfort with failing and seeing it more as as opportunities to grow, as opportunities to develop, as opportunities to change our way of thinking, as opposed to seeing it as failure for failure's sake.
And you've just touched on so many parts, which is what Risk and Rise is trying to do. I really want to start this conversation because I've also learned and seen and heard how overseas people embrace when they make a mistake, even just a failure. We've got such a big stigma to this word, whereas there it's just part of business. You try something, it doesn't work, you learn from it, you take it to the next level.
Absolutely.
So there's two aspects to it that I think I just wanted to get your opinion on. The one is my personal, as an entrepreneur, my personal ability to to deal with failure, my capacity to learn from it, my mindset to embrace it. The other side is our cultural acceptance, or as you say, tolerance or encouragement of failure. Like, it is, to me, we need both sides. And that's why, the point I want to get across is, how do we as an individual deal with our own comfort, as you called it, with failing, but also as part of a community, how can we support more people to be okay with the learning journey, which involves failure? So I don't know if you have any thoughts of that. Can you see it's like there's two sides of the coin, is the culture and the...
Absolutely. And from a systemic perspective, you've got to look at both perspectives, because both are critically important. So, I mean, from an individual perspective, I mean, something that really resonates for me is this concept of having a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. So a fixed mindset is very much seeing things in black and white, and it needs to be right, and it needs to be perfect. And, there's this way of thinking. Whereas a growth mindset is a far more curious mindset that is really kind of more open to experimentation. It is more, let's kind of play. It's more like, let me try this. I'm not totally fixed to the outcome. If I have to pivot, if I have to change, that's okay. And, I can't remember who the author was, but there was just such a wonderful way that she put it, where, sometimes where we view failure as, something that we've done wrong, is that she just put the words "not yet."
It's Carol Dweck.
Oh, that's it. Thank you.
Yes.
Carol Dweck. I remember she had like quite a complex surname that I knew that I was going to get wrong, but thank you for that. And so, just those two words,
yes.
like not yet, like I didn't succeed now, but not yet. It doesn't mean I'm not going to succeed going. I think also from an individual perspective, the problem with failure is because we internalize it so much, it becomes part of our belief system about ourselves. So we may have had an experience in our early journey on entrepreneurship where we didn't shoot the lights out the first time, and we did have a failure, but then we tend to internalize it, that kind of says, I'm not good enough. And then what the problem is, even though you start trying different things, you still have that little voice chirping in your ear, sitting on your shoulder, that says, I'm not good enough. So I think there's a whole lot of issues around having a growth mindset, and also challenging some of your limiting beliefs that might actually be keeping you in a certain place based on experiences, even from childhood, from your upbringing, from culture, that are really impacting your journey as an entrepreneur. In terms of the broader issue, it's a challenge. It's really a challenge. I mean, in the context of the entrepreneurs that I've worked with, these arduous kind of paperwork and, in trying to get funding, in trying to, navigate the entrepreneurial ecosystem in the country, there isn't like a lightness around. I'd love to see a question that says, when did you fail? Tell us when you failed, why you failed, and more importantly, what are the lessons that you can learn from the failure? And I just feel that if there was more of that mindset, I'm also involved in a lot of leadership development, a lot of, running of trainings and interventions and masterclasses. I seldom see like the key ones around failure, or tell us around when you didn't succeed. It's always about, how to master this, how to do this. So I don't think that we have a culture around failure. And I think that that's something that if we were to build it more into business, more into South African society, I think we would be much richer for it.
Yeah, so do you have any ideas of how we could? Because the one thing I try and do is when a friend or a colleague has failed or doesn't get, the result they want, I actually celebrate it. I go out of my way to say, well done. Tell us what you learned from that. It's so great that you attempted and you tried. So I think part of what I'm trying to do the Risk and Rise is get us to take that on, is to be champions of other people failing and actually cheer them on and say, well done. But I don't know if you have a suggestion that we could take into our lives to help shift that culture around.
Yeah, and I mean, I was enticed to have this discussion with you because I think it's such a fabulous initiative. Especially how you've positioned it as fail and rise. It's just so incredibly powerful. And I would love to see you make this movement in the country, is that, people start to think about failure in a different way. I mean, I recall somewhere, you can see that my specifics around where I've read things and where I've heard things aren't always the greatest, but let me give the example. Is, there's somewhere that has, and I'm not going to use the language on this call, but they call them F up nights, where
Yes.
actually people come together, and the sole focus of entrepreneurs coming together in that environment is to talk about their mess ups. Now, something like that is just so refreshing, and it's that power of the community when one person is willing to open up and share about their failures and where they came terribly short, then other people open up. And, there's kind of like a vulnerability that just leads to, well, help me understand. What can I learn? What can we do different? What would you have done differently in this situation? So I think, when we're doing training programs, when we're doing coaching, when we're doing entrepreneurial interventions, be it with entrepreneurs or with the corporates themselves who are supporting entrepreneurs, is how can we build a failure muscle?
Yeah, and I love that you say it's a muscle, because it is, I think, an ongoing activity to keep it well. So let me unpack then your failures a bit more. So you were saying you believe in failing fast and failing forward. I mean, that's quite a cliche. So how do you understand that concept? What do you mean by fail fast?
Okay, so let me give you an example. So, I mean, there are a number of initiatives that I've tried. So I'm like an uber risk taker. Like, honestly, if there's an opportunity for a risk, I'm there like a bear. But having said that, because I have such a large appetite for risk, they don't always work out. And so what I've had to learn with having an appetite for risk is how to get out quickly if it's not working and if it's not right. And if, for example, the partners aren't right, or the concept hasn't been packaged effectively, or there isn't correct product market fit, is how do I ensure that I don't get so emotionally connected to the concept or my ego issues that sit around it that it prevents me getting out quickly. It's like a similar principle to when you're a business owner, where they always say hire slowly and fire fast. And it's very true. If something's not working, learn to let it go. And most importantly, say, what do I learn from this? What do I take to the next? So failing fast and failing forward for me is knowing when something's not good, when it's not right, when it's not gelling, and to learn how to get out quickly. So I think that is one aspect of it. The other is, to have at the back of your mind that failure is a possibility in whatever you do. Don't just assume that everything is going to run smoothly. And I'm sure for you entrepreneur listeners on the call, there's not one person who would vouch that it's all plain sailing. So you've got to have a mindset like it's part of how I'm going to exist. And I feel it more so being an entrepreneur than when you're in the corporate space, because, you know, it's tough. It's really, really tough. And you know, you got to be the architect, you got to be thinking of new ideas, you got to be thinking of pivoting your business, you got to remain relevant to your environment, to your context, to your customers, to your market. And you know, you're not always going to succeed. That's the truth. It's the real truth.
Yeah. And as you say, if we can embrace that, and also as a society, we'll probably have more risk takers. So I love that you said you're an Uber risk taker, and that's the other thing I want to ask. So one is, it sounds like that you embrace this fail fast, fail forward, in terms of you gave the two examples, number wise and safe zone, where you've attempted something and it didn't work for the different reasons. But I'm also just to go one step back, you've come from the corporate world, and you've said you've always had this entrepreneurial spirit in you. Was there any fear, or like, how come it took you so long to make that leap? Was there any fear that was stopping you from making the shift to start and being entrepreneurial? Or is it just a matter of timing?
Yeah, so it's actually circumstance, an extremely funny story, but you know, I was at the height of my corporate marketing career. I couldn't have got higher if I tried. And we had a merger, and quite interestingly, like the company we merged with, I had dated the guy that I was going to be reporting to. So obviously this was like a no-go. And so it was at that point, I mean, I'd had a number of entrepreneurial ideas, and I kind of thought, you know, this is what I need to be doing now. So through circumstance, I was absolutely launched into entrepreneurship. And maybe I may have been, you know, probably may have rode the corporate kind of wave for a little bit longer, but there's nothing I regret about it. But, you know, I've been involved in businesses, I've sold businesses, I have been with partners that didn't work out, you know, so I've done quite a bit, let go, taken risks. And, you know, for me, it's been just like such an interesting journey. And, you know, if I look back on my entrepreneurial career, there's nothing I would change, absolutely nothing that I would change, because just so powerful, the richness. And, you know, if I look in one particular business now where I have a partner, we've been partners for 5 years, and like, I just know what amazing partnerships in business look like. You know, because it's just unbelievable. We are so opposite, yet when we come together, it's just 1 + 1 = 3. And it's incredibly powerful. So, you know, to be honest, there's always like a little bit of nervousness, a little bit of excitement, but I've learned as an entrepreneur to play more and to experiment more, as opposed to this belief that I'm always going to have the right answer, that I'm always going to be in the perfect space. And I also try, believe it or not to overthink. And the reason being is that I think overthinking can paralyze you. And while problem solving, analytical thinking is good, you know, you need it in a business, I think sometimes we get so hooked on that we don't actually experiment. And we don't just go out and, you know, my best slogan, just do it, you know.
Yes.
So I'm a bit of a just do it. Not that I don't calculate the risk before I go, not that I don't do the relevant kind of analysis, looking at the numbers, looking whatever I need to. But sometimes you just got to put yourself out there and just got to take the risk.
Yeah. and then learn from, as you said, then fail fast, fail forward, know when to get out, if you need to. Yeah, so many interesting things. I'm enjoying this. So maybe just to ask some questions then, just because I know you do a lot of work in all these different endeavors that you're involved in at the moment, but you do a lot of work specifically around women entrepreneurship and youth entrepreneurship. Are there any distinct challenges that women have that makes it, that why do we even have something as like a woman entrepreneurship? I mean, is there something different? And obviously, specifically around the fear of failure, is there something there that's unique to women, or is it just we're trying to promote more females? Yes.
Yeah, so that's an interesting point. So my whole philosophy in the context of dealing with both corporate and entrepreneurial women is that women are not less. Women are not less. Women make incredible leaders, entrepreneurs. They focus strongly on relationships. They are inclusive. They are collaborative. They are brilliant at relationship building. They are moderate risk takers, which, believe it or not, from an entrepreneurial perspective, can be extremely beneficial. My experience in working with women is often women don't believe in themselves enough. I'm not sure why. Maybe it's because there haven't been kind of enough role models around. And, you know, we tend to doubt ourselves. So there's a few principles, and I've outlined them in one of the books that I've written. You know, sometimes as women, we tend to be very purpose-driven, which is great because we want to make sure that everything we do has a deep and meaningful purpose. But often, if you look at our male counterparts, you know, their focus is on winning, and it is on the paycheck, and it's about how much money they're going to make. Now, I'm not saying purpose is not important. For me, you need a compelling purpose that's got to sit at the center of everything that you do. But together with that, if you can have a mindset that says business is a game, you know, I'm going to win some, I'm going to lose some, and that's the way it is, you know, and coupled with that is, you know, sometimes as women, we tend to take things a little bit personally. You know, and often what you will find is that, for example, a woman may have a fallout with another woman and then may find it difficult to do business with that woman, for example, because they fall out from a personal level. Whereas, you know, sometimes if you look at guys, you know that they actually can't stand each other on a personal note, but for business, you would swear that they were hooked at the hips. So sometimes we find it difficult to make that distinction between, you know, personal and business, and men are very comfortable to navigate that. You know, another thing that, you know, in my experience and a lot of what I teach is, you know, women tend to hint about what they want, whereas they are not forthright to just ask for what they want. Whereas men, and it links with how men network, men have kind of a very narrow kind of alliance network that they leverage to ask for things to get what they want. Whereas women tend to have much deeper networks that are, you know, fewer. There are fewer people in those networks, but they got very, very strong, solid relationships. And, you know, my view to women entrepreneurs is start working your network like a man. You know, don't feel that you need these in-depth, incredibly deep relationships before you can ask people for what you want. So, you know, as I suppose my closing thought is, you know, women are amazing. I just think there's one or two things that if we can just tweak, change, maybe that it makes us more effective as entrepreneurs. And you know as well as I do, being an entrepreneur, you've got to be quite bolshy, and you've got to put yourself out there. And you've got to have high levels of confidence, even if you don't know what you're talking about. Honestly, you know as well as I do, often I'll go into a client says, I want A, B, C, D. And like I leave with my team and I'm going, oh, that's fabulous. That's wonderful. Of course we can do that. And my team walks out quivering and saying, like, how are we going to do that? And my response is like, I have no idea, but we'll work it out. So it's really, putting this really confident kind of stance out there, because people buy confidence. There's no doubt in my mind. That's what people buy.
Yeah. But what also here behind that confidence is going back to your growth mindset point. It's like, we don't have to know how we're going to do it, but we be willing to try and to work it out and to fail fast and fail forward, so that being able to adjust quickly as we are learning, that I think brings a level of confidence, even if you don't know the how.
Yeah. And I mean, pivoting is key to the world of entrepreneurship. And so you got to learn how to keep tweaking, keep changing, keep, pivoting based on what feedback you're getting from your customers, as well as what's happening in the environment, what's happening in the competitive landscape. And my honest view is, as a entrepreneur, pivoting has to be kind of one of your core capabilities.
Yeah. And that flexibility. And then what about the youth? What's happening in the landscape of youth entrepreneurship right now in South Africa?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I think, obviously there's a huge unemployed youth problem. But, I've had quite a few discussions in the ecosystem quite recently that there are gems of entrepreneurship amidst, the many unemployed youth that there is. And I think what is key, and, in my role as director of Seed Academy, is also looking for innovative programs, partners to really look at ways that we can work in the ecosystem to support youth entrepreneurs more. And I think you often need a good mechanism to find them, and then to be able to give the support that they need. And sometimes those entrepreneurs are sitting in corporates. I mean, at Seed Academy, we ran the state of entrepreneurship for many years, and found that many entrepreneurs, do sit in the corporate space, and are kind of experimenting with entrepreneurship. But yeah, I think it's really an area that needs a lot of attention, because you and I know that entrepreneurship is really the engine that's going to drive the South African economy.
Yes. And create those much needed jobs. Yeah. And so what advice, and just to start to maybe wrap up in that, what advice would you have for those? Because I've also heard and know of a lot of people in the corporate space that are very comfortable with their, I suppose that they're not this uber risk takers. They're very comfortable with knowing how much income they're going to get every month, and they have paid leave, and they know the bounds, but there's something burning inside of them to do something different. So any advice you could give to them that would help them to overcome that fear, or that moving out of that comfort zone?
Yeah, so my personal view is, whether you're in the corporate space or whether you're in the entrepreneurial space, and I play in both spaces. All my businesses span across entrepreneurial business owners, right through to corporates. I have a personal view that nobody really can be comfortable in this market, whether you're an entrepreneur or whether you sit in a corporate. And, even as kind of someone in a corporate, you actually need an entrepreneurial mindset. You've got to be thinking around, how can I make this business more money? What is it that we could be doing that is innovative, that is rich to the market, that outstrips our competitors? And so wherever you are, you have to be on your feet. The pace of change is just so fast. We are not keeping up with the pace of change. You've got to be on your feet. You've got to be agile. You've got to be flexible. You've got to be innovative. You've got to be investing in transferable skills that are going to set you up for the future. And, you know, I've read numerous articles now that say that it's not AI, for example, that is going to kill us all, but it's going to be the lack of your ability to embrace it, to learn it, and to engage it. And so I think, be you an entrepreneur, be you someone in a corporate, you got to be on your feet, and you got to be really out there and a step ahead of everybody else.
So, just how can people get hold of you if they would like to just learn more about what you do? Is there a way?
Awesome. So I am on LinkedIn. So Donna Rachelson at LinkedIn. I also have numerous websites, but probably LinkedIn is probably the easiest one to get hold of me on.
Great. I'll put the link to your sites and your businesses that in the show notes, so if anyone wants to find them there. Well, then maybe just to ask for a parting thought, if there's anything else that comes to you, like, so if we could really change the way that we feel and we, in terms of the community, feel about failure, what would be your parting thought?
So my parting thought is always is around a quote around risk. Is, you know, that the greatest risk of life is to risk nothing at all. And I think sometimes that we get stuck. And I think taking risks, you may not land up exactly where you need to be, but the learning, the experience is really going to add richness to your life and to your career, be it in the corporate space or the entrepreneurial space.
Super. So thank you. I love that Uber risk taker. That quotes. I'm going to really, I talk about being a feedback junkie. I love feedback because that's how you grow. So maybe that's another one to borrow from you, Uber risk taker. Thank you so much, Donna.
Such a huge pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. I'm Talana Simpson, and this has been Risk and Rise. I'd just like to remind you that we are on the search to try and find the one matchstick startup, the startup business that is going to get access to office space in Johannesburg for free for 6 months, all from my One Matchstick story. So please go to onematchstick.co.za and look at how you can apply to actually become the One Matchstick startup entrepreneur. Also, we really want to spread the news about this podcast so that we can reach more people to actually change the way we are looking at, talking about, and embracing failure. So please, could you like, review, and share this podcast? It really does help more people find it. And if you believe, like me, that we need more entrepreneurs to start businesses, to create more jobs, not only in South Africa, but anywhere, we really need those people to get over whatever's holding them back and start being that Uber risk taker and going out there and making some businesses happen so they can create more jobs and stimulate our economy. If you do believe in that, please show it by sharing this podcast and giving us a review. So with that, it has been an absolute pleasure talking to you today on Risk and Rise. Let's all go and develop our failure muscle and become Uber risk takers like Donna Rachelson, and let's risk and rise together.
Thank you for joining me on Risk and Rise, where we face fears, conquer challenges, and rise above adversity to achieve our dreams. Find out more at riskandrise.co.za.